Good morning. Today I'm joined on the podcast by Lynsey Crotty, Sinnott and Rosemary Ronaldson. All the ladies are working in revenues and benefits and housing support. Probably familiar faces to people who've been watching podcasts previously, as all three have joined us on previous podcasts. Today we're going to go through the grants. We're going to give a refresh of the information that's already been given, because we're still getting quite a number of questions coming through asking about eligibility. So we'll try and cover that off today. Lynsey's joining us today as well, who's going to talk about discretionary housing payments, and Rose will pick up things on council tax support and on test and trace as well. So without further ado, I'll start with yourself, Janet. There's a communication went out yesterday on the big grants. So if you could sort of start off with telling us in detail about that grant allocation and what the process is going forward, and then give us a bit of a refresh on where we are with all the others, such as the ARG.
Yeah, sure, Mike. So we received the guidance from government on Wednesday regarding what's been referred to as the closed business lockdown payment. This is a one-off grant for businesses that have been forced to close during the lockdown period that started on January the 5th. It's going to be on top of the local restriction support grant for closed premises. And the grant amounts are £4,000 if your rateable value is between 0 and 15,000, £6,000 for between 15 and 51,000, and £9,000 for properties with rateable values greater than 51,000. So we should be in a position to make this payment early next week. So far it stands at around £2.8 million to the same businesses that have been paid the 6-week lockdown payment this week. That's around 700 businesses, but we know there are more that we need to reach. So I think today we just need to get the message across that if you haven't applied for the local restriction support grant for closed premises since any time between November the 5th and now, and you have been forced to close and you pay business rates, you can still apply on the website. We'll get you obviously registered, we'll pay anything that's outstanding to you, and then we'll get you on the regular payment rules going forward.
So Janet, the people who've applied and received this grant previously, they don't need to reapply, is what you're saying? We'll just get them automatically?
No, they don't. Yeah, we had the details from lockdown 2, because it's all the same sectors essentially that need to close. Your non-essential retail, your leisure, personal care, sports, hospitality businesses. So what we managed to do this week was to get all outstanding payments from Tier 2, Tier 4, and a 6-week upfront payment. Previously, government were advising for us to pay these in fortnightly payment runs, but they've given us the sort of authority to make a 6-week upfront payment. That should take us to the 15th of Feb, and then if the position remains the same at the mid-February review, we'll be able to send another 6-week payment for the same amount.
Excellent. So we've had a couple of questions coming in this week. There's one came in this morning from a gentleman whose business hasn't closed, but he's restricted in what he can do because a lot of his suppliers have closed. So he's continuing to work, but he's losing a significant amount of money. What's your message to people such as that gentleman?
Yeah, so what we've also got is a fund called the Additional Restrictions Grant. Now, this does have more discretion attached to it, whereas the majority of the support is aimed at those that pay business rates. The Additional Restrictions Grant is there to support those that perhaps have a business but don't pay business rates, or they pay business rates and they've been impacted as a result of the restrictions that we're in. And we've also, built into that scheme that we can, make top-up payments as well to those that have been forced to close. So we do have quite a lot of businesses actually that have applied for this already. But, if you fit into one of those categories, Additional Restrictions Grant, you apply via the website. We've got a lot of businesses already. We're due to send them another payment because they were paid as a result of lockdown 2 back in November. We're just waiting for the NFI to confirm that all those businesses are still active, because of course with a lot of these we don't have them registered with our business rate system, so we do have to do some checks. So it is taking a little bit longer for us to get the response backs from the NFI, but as soon as that comes back, we'll be able to make them an additional payment for January, and we will continue to make that payment on a monthly basis in the same way that we're paying those that pay business rates, until the funds run out. This is the one from earlier podcasts where we mentioned that, it's a pot of money. And initially the government said that, it has to last until March 22. It told us as a result of lockdown 3 that they are going to top it up. And we've received our grant allocation yesterday afternoon. So we've got some additional funds into that pot as well, which should mean that we can reach, the maximum number of businesses either through the business rate system or through this additional restrictions grant if they don't pay business rates, and of course if they're self-employed as well, as I've mentioned previously, taxi drivers, self-employed, personal care businesses.
Yeah, because we've had a couple of questions from self-employed people, asking what is available to the self-employed. So there is support available for self-employed people. Yeah,
they just need to apply for the additional restrictions grant, provide us with as much information on the application online as to how they've been affected, and just as much information that they can give us. They will be asked to upload some documents, and if they can give us as much information as possible, it saves, does prevent those delays and us having to go back to them.
What's our message, Janet, to people who can't get online? There is still people slipping through the cracks, and I guess they're not seeing some of the information that we put out because it goes out online. I know we're trying to use all forms of media to get this out, but those who aren't online, how can they apply if they can't get access to the website?
They can, if they just give us a call on the main council number, or we can send paper application forms out to anybody who's, we've had a few people actually recently that have said, they're not the best with the online form, and we've issued forms in the post.
Okay, thanks very much. Rose, track and trace, do you want to bring us up to date with what you're dealing with there?
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, with the rise in the rates within Copeland over the last few weeks, the number of applications that we're getting through has significantly increased. So we're trying to get through them as quickly as we can, because we do understand that, people are losing income in these circumstances. But there are certain criteria that still have to be fulfilled. And what those are is they must have been told by NHS Track and Trace and have a reference number that we can verify. Must be on a low income, be employed or self-employed, and have lost income due to isolating. So unfortunately, somebody that's been on furlough prior to their isolation period, that wouldn't be classed as them in work, but them working at that time. So we've had quite a few people apply in those circumstances, but unfortunately, under the criteria, they wouldn't be fulfilled. They must not be able to do their job or self-employment from home, and either them or the partner must be in receipt of one of the qualifying benefits. And those benefits are universal credit, working tax credits, income-based job seekers allowance, employment and support allowance, housing benefit, or pension credit. Now, alongside the mandatory scheme, we do also have a discretionary scheme, which all the criteria are the same, except for them being in receipt of one of the qualifying benefits. But we have had to put some criteria in there as well, which at the moment it's set to have an average weekly earnings of below £250 a week to be able to qualify. We've had quite a few applications through again from people that aren't working, so they're just on the benefits and they're not actually working. So again, it is one of the criteria that they must be employed or self-employed to be able to access the support grant. So yeah, that's the criteria really. So if anybody's in those circumstances and they're within the 14 days of their isolation period, they can still make an application.
And in terms of council tax support, what are we doing as an authority to support people with council tax?
So what we have is we've got the council tax support scheme, which is basically for people on a low income. So again, if somebody has had to be furloughed, they've lost quite a bit of income, it might be that they do qualify for the council tax support. So what they would need to do is we've got an online form on the website. If you just make an application and we will determine that. You do need to bear in mind, if you are also paying housing rent for the house that you're living in, if you are working age, then you have to claim universal credit to get help towards your rental costs. Unfortunately, unless you're in things like specified accommodation, which is specialised accommodation, or you are pension age, we can't access housing benefit through ourselves. It's got to be through universal credit.
Okay, thank you very much, Rose. Lynsey, in terms of discretionary housing payments, what are we doing there that would support our residents?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So basically, just following on from the last podcast in November, so just as a quick summary, obviously discretionary housing payments, otherwise known as DHPs, which is what obviously it gets referred to quite a lot, is a pot of money that's given annually by government to Copeland. DHPs can be awarded when a resident requires financial assistance towards housing costs, and they must be entitled to either housing benefit or universal credit with housing costs towards a rental liability. As we go into this, obviously, the last quarter of the current financial year, there is still DHP budget available for residents to apply for help, as long, again, as they're receiving, as mentioned earlier, housing benefit or universal credit with housing costs. To make an application, residents need to complete an application form. They can obtain this by visiting, obviously, the council's website. They can select the My Benefits on the homepage, or they can follow the links for discretionary housing payments. And to access that page directly, they would just need to go to www.copeland.gov.uk/discretionary-housing-payments. There's also still the option to send a paper application form to residents who have issues accessing the internet. So they can contact the council on 01946 598300, or they can make a request via email to benefits@copeland.gov.uk. For any of our vulnerable residents, which obviously there is a lot out there, and that application can also be completed with them over the telephone. So with all the different options available to complete a form, it's enabling all of our residents to access the service fully. So when the DHP applications are received, if any other advice can be made by way of any extra support, this will be provided, including as well residents who don't have a council tax support claim. They'll be advised how they need to do this, because that is crucial to get that into payment for them. So again, obviously, if they need to discuss anything with me regarding a discretionary housing payment, again, they can contact the council and speak to me directly if they need any extra help, support or advice.
Okay, thanks, Lynsey. That's really helpful. Rose, when we were chatting just before we started recording today, you said you had some successful applications as a result of just our own staff sharing podcasts and posts with various information.
Yeah, it's been really good. I know one of my family members said that because I shared something on my social media to do with the business grants, that they hadn't realised that was available, so they'd been able to make an application. So they were really grateful for that. So any of the staff, if you can just share the pages, the fact that yourself, Mike, you share everything, it's really good because it is getting that message out there.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Anybody tuning in today, I would urge you to share these podcasts to as many people as you can, because we are still, despite all the messages that we're putting out in the media, having people slip through the cracks because they don't know what's available to them and what they may be entitled to. And times are difficult enough. and we don't want, if possible, anybody missing out on something that is there and available to support them. Janet, have you got any concluding comments that you'd like to make today, or any messages you particularly like to get out?
Yeah, just to ask businesses for the patience, really, if they've received the confirmation email, we do have your details, and we will get to the grant application. It is taking us a little while longer to process because of the number of different schemes that we're running at the minute. But as we clear one, it does give us the opportunity to move on and deal with other schemes. Our focus for next week is to get the additional restrictions grant second payment out, and to focus on this large payment, the closed business lockdown payment. We've also got some outstanding Christmas support, £1,000 wet lead pubs, and they will be sent by the end of today.
Okay.
Just if anyone's unsure, just give us a ring. As both Lynsey and Rose have said, call the council. If you've got a business and you're thinking, how do I make sense of all this information? Just business.rates@copeland.gov.uk, or call us on, as Lynsey said, 01946 598 300, and press the option for business rates.
We have this week published on our major channels and on the Facebook page and the website a sheet with contact details for various departments and detailing some of the various different levels of support that's available. Ladies, can I thank you all for joining me this morning? It's really appreciated that you're prepared to come on these podcasts and share your experience with our residents. I know it can be daunting for a lot of people. People might not realise it's quite a daunting prospect to sit in front of a camera and do this, because it's not part of the job description or the day job. But take back to your teams. My thanks in particular, and on behalf of all the residents. You're doing an absolutely fantastic job, and certainly the message is coming through to me on social media. That's been really appreciated by the public at large. So keep up the good work. We're leading the way. I'm really sort of proud of the work that you're doing on behalf of Copeland Council to make sure that the people in our borough are getting all the support they deserve as quickly as is practically possible. So Janet, Lynsey, Rose, thank you all for joining us this morning, and I shall see you all very shortly.
Thank you.